It's time for Mad Markets. Paul Theron joins us now and dressed in the right attire because the Super Bowl in the US is almost like the biggest event that happens.
After Thanksgiving, it's the weekend where Americans consume the most food in one weekend. Apparently, it's a whole thing with chicken wings. But you can't just serve chicken wings, which you got from the Kentucky down the road. You have to put on a proper party. Everybody gets together. It's like a 4 or 5 hour television spectacle. And you can watch it here on ESPN.
Okay, so I know that Madonna's also going to be performing.
You're so up to date.
Yes, I know.
Halftime show is another thing. So what they do is they cover up the field. This one's going to be in Indianapolis, which is because it's determined in advance, irrespective of which teams are playing. So at halftime, Madonna is singing.
Apparently there's a lot of breaks in this. So if you actually count all the breaks without all the breaks, then you actually just play 15 minutes of the game.
No, it's 4 quarters of 15 minutes each.
Yeah.
So it's basically an hour's worth of football, which takes like 4 hours to play. But you're right, it's because when the teams go off, offense and defense teams, then they have an ad break. It's the only sport where, in fact, the play stops until the ad break's finished. But understand, the ads these are not just any ads. Because it's got such an enormous television audience, like northwards of 70 million people or something, they actually sell these ads for incredible prices, and companies make new ads for the purpose, yes. So all the car companies, all the fast food companies, anybody who's anybody is paying millions and millions of dollars to air a 30-second commercial, like $3 million for a 30-minute commercial, 30-second commercial. But also they have massive production efforts that go into making these.
And what great news, unemployment dropping to 8.3%. So everyone is really happy in the US. We spoke on this quite extensively a little earlier with Wayne McCurry. He's very confident about some of the data that we've seen coming through from the US, but he still thinks there's a lot of troubles that need to feed through on a global level.
I was listening to Wayne talk earlier. He's always got great insights. I mean, his key point was that things are not necessarily better, but things feel like they're getting better. So you saw on InTrade, which is the prediction markets website in the US, that Barack Obama's chances of election are now up to 57%. It doesn't mean anything. It's just people betting on the likely outcome of the election in November in the US. But obviously, if unemployment is coming down and the general economic environment's improving, then people feel better about the status quo. So absolutely, yes, positive read on the jobs front. And we know that Americans are really only mostly interested in things to do with themselves. So what that means is that if the market rallies off of a good number, that then global markets are going to rally, so we'll all catch the tailwind. Let's hope.
Let's hope.
Good.
So quite a lot of positivity, and then we even seen quite a lot of positivity coming through from Europe. We've had fantastic PMI numbers this week. It's been quite a strong week on the economic front, but there's still one thing that's hanging over everyone's head, and this is debt swap in Greece.
Debt swap in Greece, oh my goodness.
And no one's really spoken about Greece today, so hopefully we can continue this for how many days? 5 days, and then you'll think that everything is fine.
One of my friends on Twitter said he was leaving work and going home back to bed because he felt like 1,000,000 drachmas, which is another way of saying he wasn't feeling very good at all. But my view about the European thing and the Greek thing is that the only people that still own Greek debt are either the ECB, which bought a bucket load of it, or hedge funds and other people who bought it mostly at prices lower than it's trading at the moment. So I honestly think things are going to be fine there. I know that there's been a bit of brinkmanship between the government negotiators and the Papademos saying that he would quit if it didn't go through and so on and so forth. But, I think we're going to muddle through there. In fact, if you talk Europe, I think by far the bigger and more interesting story was the Xstrata Glencore potential merger, which also shows that economically people are starting to look forward, not back,
So speaking of Europe, Swiss Competition Commission announcing an investigation into a possible cartel by a dozen banks, amongst them UBS, Credit Suisse, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase. Quite a few.
Exactly.
So this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, look, I mean, the whole Swiss banking thing, there's another of the Swiss banks, Widigo, which is one of the world's oldest private banks, which has been charged with, misbehaving with regard to US clients and disclosure of information to the IRS. Look, Deutsche Bank had their results out earlier this week. Joseph Ackermann, the CEO there, is about to retire. He's being succeeded by Anshu Jain and a German. It looked like Deutsche Bank's board couldn't bring themselves to hire a non-German to be the CEO alone. But anyway, I don't know. Again, the banks are starting to get access to the market. Whether or not this legal matter is going to be of particular interest remains to be seen. But we're avoiding the banks for the moment because they still seem to be a bit fragmented and the story isn't exactly clear. Meanwhile, back in the States, speaking competition issues and, regulatory concerns, this thing with MTN in Iran seems to be a bit of a pudding, huh?
Absolutely. I mean, and MTN is coming under pressure. As you heard earlier, Wayne was saying that a lot of the foreigners are just selling out of MTN, and this perhaps offering opportunity to locals.
Yeah, we'll see where it closes now.
MTN is at 135 Rand and 99 cents.
Okay, so it was in fact a little bit off the lows at the close. So big volume though. Look, it's tricky to read. As far as I'm concerned, the Turkcell thing is a side issue. The Turkcell thing sounds like bitter grapes on their part. We know they were tossed out and then others came in. What for me is more worrisome about the MTN Iran situation is the growing thunderclouds about the possibility of an Israeli military strike on the nuclear facilities in Iran, which there's been some saber rattling around that, and Leon Panetta, who's the Secretary of Defense in the US, has kind of said that he imagines it could happen.
But Iran is relatively small to MTN. Why are we so concerned? Why are we so worried? I mean, obviously there will be a loss there.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, let's cross our thumbs, because the concept of like a total burnout war in that area is almost unspeakably bad. And then there would be a reaction and things would be totally horrible. So I'm not planning that to be part of my baseline scenario. But even an escalation of hostilities. But to come back to your question about valuations, the thing is they only make like 10% of their profits in Iran. But the point is that it's a big customer base. We know that in a short number of years, the number of Iranian customers is now equivalent to the number of South African customers for MTN. And we know they're mostly poor, and their average revenue per user is like $10 US a month, which is weak. They need to work on that. The fact is there's a lot of customers, and it was a market which MTN was very excited about. Yeah. So it does count in terms of the value of the share. But you can see, I don't know, it's not as though it's a new risk. This has been around a while.
Absolutely.
So hopefully, things will resolve themselves positively.
Okay, so do you own Old Mutual?
Not a single one. Shame.
£1 billion returning to shareholders. And I love the way that Wayne actually said, people have such a short-term memory. I mean, not too long ago, it was sitting at 5-6 Rand a share. It's sitting at close to 19 Rand, 18 Rand 77.
Yeah, but to be fair, that 5 Rand
return.
Valuation, or 3 Rand or whatever it was reached when it was right in the middle of the credit crunch. Their US subsidiary had some major balance sheet holes because of assets that it held in the securitized environment and so on. So it was really, really looking quite grim.
My heart goes out to people that sold Old Mutual close to that level.
Yes, look, we didn't have any before, so when they went down, we didn't care. Now that they come up, we didn't care either. But they're reorganizing their assets. We know that they've got the global stuff, and now it's going to be more South Africa and less of these sort of far-flung stuff. So, I mean, it's kind of finding a value and finding some supports.
Have a fantastic weekend. Thank you so much for joining us.
And the New York Giants hopefully will emerge victoriously on the weekend.
Indeed, I hope so too. Thank you so much, Paul. Great to have you on the program.